what if your 9 to 5 could actually fuel your freedom and wasn't actually creating those handcuffs or the proverbial handcuffs that sometimes we feel like we have on when we're in a 9 to 5 job as parents? This week on All Figured Out, I'm joined by Sarah Coombes, who is a multiple income strategist. I have never met someone who has a title like that. She does wear a lot of hats, but she is the host of the Richer podcast. She is in education, and she also helps women build beautiful, wealthy lives without sacrificing what matters most. And on this podcast, that is time and presence with your family. Sarah's story really flips the script on what financial freedom looks like and how you get there. I was actually just blown away by some of the stories and some of the mindset shifts that she provided in this episode. I'm not just saying this, I will be listening back to this episode as a listener because there's just so much in what she said that is so different from what we're taught or not taught about wealth, finances, how to grow money. And she even says things like, you don't need a budget, which I love that. So some of the things we talk about, why your day job can actually be your greatest asset and it's not that it's preventing you from doing other things. That was very interesting. We talk about how to start building multiple income streams, even with young kids. She herself has 3 kids under 7. The real difference between consuming and producing money, and how to create a support system that actually supports you. So this, man, I was just blown away by this conversation. I think you're going to love it. So whether you're feeling boxed in by your career or overwhelmed by the idea of starting something new, this episode is absolutely jam-packed with very practical mindset shifts and permission to do things a bit differently so that you can make more money and still have time with your kids. And those two things can coexist. Sarah's approach is very honest. It's very empowering. It's very positive, and I'm really excited to hear what you think. So let's get into it. This is All Figured Out. I'm Andrea Barr. I'm a career coach for parents, a mom of 2, and I absolutely believe that you can continue to grow personally and professionally while protecting family time. We're about to figure out this work, life, and parenting stuff out together. Sarah Coombes, thank you so much for coming on the All Figured Out podcast.
Thanks, Andrea. It's lovely to be here.
There is so much we can talk about in your story and in the work that you do currently as a multiple income strategist, supporting women who want to build beautiful, wealthy lives. But I want to take it back. Let's just jump. We're just jumping right into it. There's no small talk here. Let's take it back. I want to take it back to, I want to hear about your childhood, but we don't have the time for that today. So let's go into the first time. Tell me about the first time in your career when you had multiple streams of income. Like you went from saying having one job or one stream of income to 2+. What was that moment for you?
So in that moment, I was 22 years old and I was living a full life, but I had a lot of disposable income that I was saving. And then my first income stream was property. It was from rental income. And I can remember thinking, wow, I'm going to throw all my money into this because what's the point? It's sitting there in the savings, and your savings, when you are a single 22-year-old, your responsibilities are a whole lot less. So your safety net can be a whole lot smaller. So
Yes.
Most 22-year-olds at that time weren't thinking of how I can turn my money into more money. But I was fascinated with it. And I had grown up seeing my parents renovate houses. We would move every 6 months. And I knew that there was money to be made, but in rental income, I wasn't too sure. So that was my first my second type of income that I started doing.
Wow. Fascinating. So you were an educator at the beginning of your career. You were a teacher. And so then you layered in this rental income piece to it. And tell me about your career trajectory. So you're kind of you're juggling these two worlds, which is probably quite, I mean, I'm thinking 22. I was not doing anything like that at 22. Was that unusual for the people around you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was unusual. And at the time, I had just moved from Australia to New Zealand, where place that I was at where I lived, my hometown in Australia, we had a huge housing bubble. So I saw firsthand how quickly things can change when that bubble pops.
Hmm.
So I came over to New Zealand and created that income, but the stakes were a whole lot lower. To buy a house in New Zealand was a whole lot less. We're talking $1 million to 350,000. So yeah.
So, Sarah, you were an educator. You were a teacher by trade. I know throughout the course of your career as a teacher, you got into administration and all of that. Tell me about your career trajectory in being a teacher and then maybe those junction points, like those points where you're like, okay, there's multiple streams of income. Where do I want to spend my time? I imagine as a teacher, it's a very demanding job. And so, how did your career progress from there?
So I think I don't want to say that I stumbled into it because there were accidental actions. There were deliberate actions that I took to get myself in the position that I was in. But for me, I got into teaching wanting to make change. I was in an education system that I was actually really bored of. And I sat there the whole time thinking, I can do this so much better. There's so many more fun ways to do this. So for me, leadership was a natural progression in education because I wanted to be at the tables that were making that change. So that was an easy path for me. I felt that was where I was always heading with education. And I think what surprises people the most when they work with me is that some coaches and advisors go, oh, you need to get rid of your 9 to 5 income and all these things. Whereas my 9 to 5 income gave me the freedom to build these other streams of income. Without it, I wouldn't have had the stability to get loans. I wouldn't have had stability to get the leverage that I got. And I think that that's where lots of people get it wrong, is that your 9 to 5 income does play a role in giving you a head start if it is used correctly.
Oh my gosh, I think that is such an interesting point that people don't talk about enough. I've had this conversation a lot on the podcast recently with people who have that discussion around like not everybody should just up and quit and leave their 9 to 5 and become entrepreneurs because they've been sold this very dangerous narrative that entrepreneurship is the only way to have time and financial freedom. Can we get into that for a second about the leverage and what you mean by that? And so by showing the bank or whoever you are that you're borrowing money that you are a stable person and worthy of being lent to. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about the role of, I guess, taking on debt, leveraging yourself in a way to make more money. Can we go there?
Yeah. So for leverage, when you go to a bank and you go, the difference between business income and a 9 to 5 income is that the bank, if someone else is employing you, they believe that you are a stable person and you've got a stable income. From a business perspective, you need to have, in New Zealand and in Australia, you need to have 2 years of financials. And we know that as entrepreneurs, to have 2 years of great financials is very hard in this period of growth and establishing. So you're looking at needing really 5 years of business income before you have access to that money. Whereas a 9 to 5 income, I could go and get a job tomorrow, and then the next day I could go and apply for a bank loan and I would be given it. So the cost
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So the cost of that 5 years, what that 5 years is going to cost you, in terms of property or in the share market or in business, somebody's already come up with your business idea. The property market has boomed. The stock market has taken off, so that cost of not using a 9 to 5 income it's a great stepping block that I think that lots of people downplay.
Oh my gosh. And is it necessary? So I want to debunk some things. So I'm just going to pepper you with questions as they come because I feel like you're the right person to ask. Okay, so you hear about people like, I'm not even going to say Donald Trump, other prolific business owners who I think of him just because of the fact that he won't share his financials. And I think there's obviously a reason to that. But, anyways, I digress. The world's wealthiest people, we hear that they are people who never actually spend their own money to make money. They're all about spending someone else's money in order. And maybe that we're talking like really big businesses at this point. But what does that mean? When somebody says that, when they're talking about spending other money to make money, how does that work? What does that mean?
So one misconception around the banking system is that banks make money. Yes, they make money, but they make money off your money. So they can only give out these loans if people are holding money in savings accounts, because then otherwise they need to, they're overstretching themselves. So one of the ways that people use other people's money is that they go to a bank and then the bank loans them that money. So when a bank is first establishing itself, it'll have things like high interest savings accounts so that people are depositing their money and they know that that is fixed in for the next 2 years. So they know how much they can, as an ethical lender of money, how much they can pass on to other people. I think that is where they talk about leveraging. Also, when you get ultra wealthy, there are a lot of tax benefits and loopholes that those people have access to that the middle class can't get access to because we don't have that net wealth. So things like government initiatives where they'll go, if you bring your building development company to our country, we will give you a tax rate of this or that, or different states. In America is states. Every state's, I'm not sure how Canada works, but they'll give tax breaks for these companies to come in, and if they've got a housing shortage or they've got a healthcare shortage, they will provide incentives for those sorts of things. And I think that there's also this conception around debt as being bad. Debt is only bad when it can't make you money. So,
say that again. Say that again.
Debt is only bad when it doesn't make you money. So if you are going to go and get a $20,000 business loan with no strategy, that is not a business, that is gambling. And when you go and get a car loan for a brand new car, there's no strategy in it. It is a depreciating asset. You are losing money on it, yet you've still got a $50,000 car loan and your car's only worth $42,000 as soon as you drive it out of the car yard. So, and in New Zealand, a huge problem is easy finance, is these 2 years interest free, but as soon as you come off the 2-year period, you're hit with 13, 14, 30% interest charges, which people get stung with because they think, oh, it's interest free at this point, it's fine. But it also, in accessing those easy finance options, it then limits your financial plan because the banks are going, or investors are going, oh, you've already actually got this amount of debt going out and there's nothing coming in more for it.
Oh, so interesting. Okay, thank you for explaining that, because in my head, I like that you broke it down into the ultra wealthy and how that's actually a very different game, obviously, that they're playing, in that they're no longer taking their own money. Like, they keep their money in their different, investment opportunities. So they're not taking their own money out in order to, like, they're borrowing money to do all that stuff. So that's interesting. But then what you're talking about is like at the, mere mortal level, even multimillionaires who are listening, or anybody who's kind of in the like non-ultra wealthy multi-billionaire world. I mean, if any of you are, like, please let me know. I'm curious. But yeah, that's really interesting. Like, if you're not, okay, so if you're borrowing money, but it's not making you money, that's bad investment. So let's give it a tangible example on that, which was one of the first, like, I did go to school and study business. However, it's not until you hit the real life that you're like, oh, now I understand. So I remember, I'm gonna be honest, I'm coming across a situation where I was buying a car, my first car that I purchased, and I had some money, a bit of money in investments. And the opportunity I had to buy this car, there was at the time a 0.9% interest. And I remember thinking, but now you have to tell me if I made the right choice or not. But I think I did. I said, okay, why pull the money out that is making X amount well above 0.9%? Why pull money out to pay for this car when I can keep my money in the market working at a way higher interest rate, growing because it's making
Yes.
money? So I am going to take this loan, which was scary because I was like, that's not what you do. That's not what like smart people do. They don't take on debt. But then I remember thinking, well, no, because why would I take out that opportunity to make more money on that, however much the car was? I'm going to take this on. Now, what do you think about something like that?
So my philosophy is you should not have a brand new car unless your investments can pay for it.
Ooh, what do you mean by that?
So like if I'm going to go and my extra income or my multiple income has got to be able to cover my car payments. For me, that is when a car can be used, because if I'm using it for business activity, that is a tax write-off. It is able to reduce my tax. I think that's another point of like not using your own money. I'm using money that I have created from multiple incomes to fund my brand new car, but it's actually not coming out of my bank account directly. So they're using assets or business income to then pay for their lifestyle rather than having the lifestyle and using income as an afterthought to pay for it. Because I think that's where the middle income sort of lose out, is when you don't have a business or you don't have that leverage, is that when you go and buy a car, it is depreciation, is a depreciating asset. Whereas when you have a car as a business, you start coming into the tax strategy. You aren't using your own income for it.
Yeah. Okay. It's so interesting. So it really, even though it's the same pot of money, technically, you do have to understand like the hypothetical. It's so weird how money isn't actually tangible anymore.
No.
Like you're just, but it does have to be like this concept that you can really wrap your head around and think like, okay, where is this coming from? How is this working for me? So that makes so much sense. I want to pivot back over to your story. And what was the moment? So at one point, did you have children versus when you left education and started more businesses, multiple business? Like tell me everything. How did this all unfold for you entering motherhood?
So for me, with education, I realized that what kept me up at night was the thought that I couldn't replace the income. And so for me, creating that multiple incomes gave me peace of mind that if education didn't work out or I was no longer enjoying it, that I could decide to leave without it totally derailing my life. So that was really the starting point of why I wanted the multiple income streams to come in. And then I became a mother and I went back to the workforce, and I was going, well, how do you do it? Like, how do you balance motherhood, your work demands, and being a good partner? And everyone I talked to was walking around and they're going, oh, I'm a miserable partner. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is my future. Like, I resigned from that job and I moved on. And then I went into leadership roles. And I think that has been, in that moment of me being an educator and my whole identity and that workforce, it was like being in a long-term relationship where you're going, hang on, this relationship no longer fits for me. I've got to pivot here. And it's a huge identity shift when you've been somewhere so long to go through that transition, as you will know, being a career coach. But once you make that pivot and you realize what you will and you will not stand for and what doesn't fit, all these opportunities open. And I think when you are in this cycle of self-sabotage and staying in these workplace environments where you aren't going to thrive, there is a huge power in knowing exactly what you will stand for and what you won't stand for. And I think that has been the greatest part of my journey, is getting really clear on the boundary set. And also, my husband does have back issues, And for us, it was a lot of the reason that we got into creating income. He was a builder. He is a builder, and he loves his job, loves it. He loves building. But he was coming home and he was lying on the ground in so much agony, and he would spend all of Saturday, half of Sunday on the floor in agony. And the man that I had married was somebody who would jump out of bed before me. I would have my cup of tea waiting for me, to now this man that spent an hour every morning mentally preparing himself to get out of bed. So that wasn't a long game for us. And that was really a driving point of being like, we actually can't continue on this path. We've got to use some of this leverage that we've got to replace his income so that he no longer is in this position where he has to go through pain.
I think it's such a beautiful story that you've highlighted for both of you, where you're saying that you felt like you lacked this choice by staying in education, and that you were almost like handcuffed because you're like, okay, people can do it. People can have beautiful, fulfilling lives, raise their children, and be super happy in education. We're not saying that, but for you, you were like, no, that's not for me. But if I didn't have that other stream of income, I would be handcuffed and I would lack a lot of choice because there would be way too much risk. And it sounds like for your husband, you're like, okay, building is way too hard on the body. And so because you have leverage and because you have that, the smarts that you're now passing on to all of our listeners, and we're going to get there, you're like, okay, let's figure out how to create choice here, because we don't want to get to a situation where all of a sudden you're like, I actually cannot go to work tomorrow. And then boom, his income's gone. Like, that's scary. So I love this ability of like taking things back into your own hands. What would you tell someone who's sitting in a position right now where they just, most of our listeners, Sarah, are people who are in 9-to-5 jobs. And I hear from people all the time, whether it's coaching or someone who's listened to a podcast episode or through, I don't know, Instagram or whatever. And they're like, I don't know how to get out of this. I have an income at a 9-to-5 job. My partner has an income at a 9-to-5 job. There's no wiggle room. There's no flexibility. It's just jumping from one ship to another scary ship and taking a really big risk. But like, I don't even want to replace this job with another job. Like, I want to do something else or whatever. People feel very, very fearful. What would you tell that person?
I think that you need to stop only talking about money when there's a crisis. I think there is a lot of conversations that we have when we are working a 9-to-5. These conversations around money only come up when it has hit the fan. And yeah. I'm taking these conversations and looking at it. So when I was 21, I went to my now mentor, the richest lady. I went and I took her my budgeting plan. Now, I'm not someone you come to for budgeting because of this reason. So I had spent all these hours doing this beautiful spreadsheet budgeting plan, and I showed it to her to be like, oh, look, I've got my head screwed on. Look at me, 21 years old with a budget plan. And she laughed. And I was like, why? Like, she said, I haven't had a budget since 5th grade. And I was like,
no,
what?
Sarah.
Yeah. And
this is the unlock. This is the part of the episode that things are getting juicy.
So I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. So I thought that, if I scaled down in this area and I scaled down in this area, that, I'd have all this money to grow money. Yes, true. But she was like, people overcomplicate it. Your money is either consuming or it's producing. And you need to get your money to a point where it is producing more money than you are consuming. So that was my starting point. And that was where I went through this mindset shift of, okay, it's not my electricity bill. It's not my Netflix subscriptions. It's not those coffees or those lattes I'm going for.
The Amazon packages.
That's all in consuming. So, we can start off in incremental steps of like, okay, I'm going to aim for 5% of my income to be producing money for me, whether that's a really easy way is stocks. When it's low, you can just use what you've got as long as you have a sound strategy to make more money. And we can get a little bit more into how that can make you money, but a bit later. But then you go to 10%, and then you go, you get to a point where now we're well over that 70%, of your 70% of our income is producing more income for us. So I think what happens when you're stuck in a 9 to 5 is there is a lifestyle creep that comes up and you go, oh, I've got a $10,000 pay rise. What are we going to do with it? Oh, hang on. By the time I take out tax, it's actually only like $6,500. And then it's like, but now I've gone and spent $15,000 on a holiday and there's your pay rise gone. And I think where that producing versus consuming mindset, it's very clear. Like, I'm getting the $6,500 after tax, and I'm going, if you're in the higher tax bracket, and what am I going to use that to produce money, rather than having the consuming part of your money plan going up and up, which is what lots of people do when their lifestyle starts to creep. They get a nicer car, they buy a flash couch, they buy the best home stereo system, those sorts of things. That lifestyle creep doesn't come up. Then you use those pay rises to then start building this side up and this side up. Yeah.
So there is still, okay, I got a little excited thinking that you'd have to throw away the budget, but there is merit in the budget because you have to manage the scope creep or the lifestyle creep.
Yeah.
So you're saying you've got to wrangle that first. That's like baseline.
Baseline.
Get that baseline so that you're making more than you're spending.
Mm.
And then we can talk about like even just starting. I like that though, like 5% or like 1%, but taking something to start to grow, because compound interest is a thing. We know that. That's a real thing. Okay, what about the person who isn't actually making more than they're spending? And that's a lot of people listening. Even if they on paper look like they're making a great income, they are not willing to maybe like move to a cheaper house or whatever. They're kind of like, okay, we're doing the best we can.
So
We've got
living
2 young
beyond their
kids,
means.
a little
Is that
bit
what you're
living
talking
beyond
about?
their means, or like pretty paycheck to paycheck, even though looks like they're doing super well. You know what I mean? Like, what could they do if they're like, hey, we've stripped things down to the minimum of what we're willing to, like, how we're willing to live. And maybe that's a mindset thing. But just for an example, and they're like, is there a way to make more money? Like, how could we be making more money given the fact that we're like at the bare minimum of what we could spend?
If you've got no disposable income, is that what you're saying? It doesn't matter whether you are high earning or not. You've got no disposable income, but you're not willing to budge on your lifestyle.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that just having your cake and eating it too, or is there like something that you could do?
Well, it depends on the individual situation, but it's also, well, what do you have to leverage then? If you're not willing to give up the lifestyle that you have, what do you have to leverage to make you more income? And I think that is a powerful piece in what are your strengths? You know, is it time that you've got to leverage? Is it your strengths that you've got to leverage? Is it your experience that you've got to leverage? And it really depends on the individual situation. But if you're not willing to budge in the budgeting money plan sort of area, then that's where you really need to sit down and go, okay, what assets do I have to leverage?
Okay, that's cool. And that's where it comes into the topic of multiple streams of income. So say you're like, okay, yes, I'm time strapped. We have 2 young kids, 3 young kids. But I do, like, if this is really important to me, and even if we're making, $300,000-$400,000 a year, but we're at we just can't spend any less than what we're spending. Maybe that's when you have to say, okay, what could I leverage? Technically, I could spend an hour that I would be watching TV at night, and maybe that's my hour that I could leverage to figure out a way to make money in that hour. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, but there's always something that you always have to sacrifice something. It's just, what are you willing to sacrifice? So if you're not willing to sacrifice your lifestyle, you need to be willing to sacrifice your time. Whether that's educating yourself so you've got the skills, whether it's using the skills you've already got or the qualifications that you've already got. But there is always a cost of something, and there's always a benefit of something. And you've got to ask yourself, okay, well, if I'm sitting on my phone for 2 hours every night, once the kids go to bed, that's an easy thing to replace making money with I guess you have to really look at what you're willing to budge on and what you're willing to use as leverage as well. Because you don't want to be, if you do it in a way that isn't aligned, you're not going to do well at it because it's going to be a drag. The thought of,
Yes.
oh no, I've got to start like for some women, it's their third shift of the night. So,
Totally.
looking at those,
Yeah.
do you have networks that you can leverage from? That's another way you can leverage. So it really, that question is so broad and we could go down so many rabbit holes with, but it really depends on the individual circumstance of that person.
Yeah.
And I know lots of people that are on nearly $500,000 that have got the same problems as people on $50,000 because they haven't got the basics right. And when you don't have a plan, the person with $500,000 still has the same issues as someone with $50,000. They're just on
Isn't
different
that
scales.
incredible? Yeah, because it's just a ratio. It's just, yeah, like it's, if you look at it in percentages, it doesn't actually matter how much you're making if you're spending the same amount. There
Yeah.
could be the person making 50,000 who could be actually further ahead, have
Yeah.
more money to make because they have, yeah, it's so
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Okay.
so
Sorry.
that's probably a big part of my story is that I went from $110,000 a year with all these lifestyle perks in Australia to moving to New Zealand on $53,000 a year. And I made more money. I can remember having this conversation with my parents. And this is a very good part about having the right accountability partners. But I can remember saying to my parents, oh, I could never do this. I could never afford to have a house. I could never afford all these things. I was on $110,000, which if you adjusted that for inflation now is probably closer to $180,000. And that's just nuts. Like that is
Yeah.
a mindset problem. Like I had imposed all these limiting beliefs that I wasn't able to do it because I didn't earn enough money. Then I moved to New Zealand, halved my income, and was like, right, we've got to do some stuff here because I can't sustain the lifestyle that I want on this income.
Wow. And so what did you do? How did you then start getting ahead and living a more, you on your podcast, we've talked about how like creating a beautiful life. So how did you do that?
So initially we started a property development company where we would build houses and then sell them. And at the start, it was like, this looks like a good section. Let's just do it. We built on it. And then at the end, we were like, right, we want to go traveling now. In that first property gave us so much a mindset problem that we probably held at the time. But for us, we wanted to go traveling. We were just beelining on, okay, we want to go traveling now. So let's just sell this and be done. But in the meantime, while we were selling it, another section of land came up and we had no jobs. We had no way to get finance. We were self-employed. Like we had no jobs on paper. I wasn't currently teaching at that time. We had just finished building the house and we didn't have enough books on the business to be able to go for a loan. So as a result, and I think this is where the mindset shift from the poor financial mindset to the wealthy financial mindset changes is we still made a profit. We made less than the real estate agent did on that property, but that property to the section, we were able to double our income. But if we weren't able to use that leverage at that time and that section would have gone, the gains that we got off this new section, it was worth taking the 30 grand less than we could have got to go and make the 700,000 that you make over here, So I think where I see people getting stuck with when they are selling a product or they're selling property in particular, actually, is that they've got $1 million property and they're fixated on that $1 million price, and someone comes and offers them 970,000 and they go, oh no, it's $1 million. Meanwhile, they've then got to hold the property. I've got an example of somebody who held the property then for 5 years, and the maintenance costs of holding that property, by the time he went to sell it again, he had to repaint it, he had to do the lawns every 2 weeks, all the holding costs of the rates, the insurance. It's like, yeah, that 30 grand, you can get fixated on that 30 grand, or you could go, right, what can I move if you are staying in the same market am I chasing an opportunity that's going to make me more money? I think when you're exiting the market, whether it's real estate or it's stocks, when you are taking yourself out of the market, that is when you lose. And like you said, with compounding interest is so somebody stopped me in the grocery store the other day and we were having this conversation and they were going, oh yeah, I'm thinking about putting my money in stocks. And I know a little bit about this person, but we had, I know they're quite impulsive. And if you're an impulsive person, I would not recommend stocks because it is very easy now with the apps to do transactions very quickly. So as soon as you have an impulsive thought, I want to buy a new car, I want to buy a new boat, it's very easy for you to access that money and take it out. But it is the long game that you win with stocks. If you're in it for the long game, the longer your runway, the lower the risk.
So interesting. Wow. Okay. So there's so much. Oh my gosh, there's so much in that. So for you, take me back to like what gave you that confidence to leave teaching to pursue even doing this, like having the property development. Like tell me about the bridge and the gap there and how bringing your children to the world, like how did that fit into this whole story? Because this is a fascinating story and one I haven't uncovered yet.
Yeah, so I'm in an acting leadership role now, still in education. And that for me, education on a leadership level still gives me so much joy. Like for me, I love educating people, and that is a part of me that I still am trying to hold on to, and that's where I've moved into now educating women on how to do this. And I think I'm living proof of like, I've got a lot of hats to navigate, but there's systems and there's reasons behind why I haven't burnt myself out. And I think there is this narrative that you have to choose between motherhood or having a career. And I think that being a mother is the greatest motivation behind why you want more and why you want better for your kids. And there's often this thing of, oh, my kids are too young for me to do this, or my kids, I have to spend all this money on my kids and I can't get ahead. And, spending money on your kids doesn't make you a good parent. And I've got lots of people that I know that are living proof that they will spend a lot on their children but have got no relationship with them. And every path, there's no right way to do motherhood or parenthood, and we only learn as we go along. We're all new to this. So yeah, I think the driving factor for me was like, right, I want to create a life where I am still a present mother, where I am still happy having my own identity, and my kids are the greatest motivation behind my why. The reason that I have these boundaries around my work and my career is because of my kids. And the reason and my kids know that things come in season. This work-life balance is a lie. There's no work-life balance. There's seasons of sometimes the priority is work, and your children see that. And what lessons do they see from that time is like, my kids literally come to our strategy meetings. Like, our whole strategy team knows my kids. And if I can't trust them knowing my kids, can I trust them with my money? And they hear those conversations around money. And it is, our conversations are quite empowering around money, so that they're not growing up with the mindset that money is only talked about when there's a crisis.
So there it is again.
Sorry, we went down a rabbit hole again. But that is my biggest reason. It's like, I want to show my kids that you can have it all, but you don't have to do it all at the expense of your own mental health. And they see that my husband and I, when we have conversations around money, both of our opinions are valued, and we're showing them how to navigate those conversations so that when they have those conversations with their partners later in life, they can go, oh, well, my mum and dad used to talk. It wasn't mum handled the household, dad handled the finances. It was because I've had stories of women messaging me going, I was that woman, like I'm now a widow. I was that woman that was never invited to the table. And now I had to learn it all the hard way. I didn't even know who my husband went to for advisory. And, there's this huge gap when women become widows, this big financial gap. And that is part of the reason of that generation, is that they were never privy to being at that table. So
I love that you have that partnership. You talk about it with your kids. When you say my strategy team, who is that? What does that mean?
So like we've got a business advisor, an accountant, we've got a lawyer, we've got a finance guy that we have on our team as well. So that when we're going into these strategy meetings, we learned the hard way that not having a strategy team can cost you in the long run, because when you don't have those strategy meetings, when you go into a meeting with one of them, you come out and you go and advise the lawyer, right, he said we've got to do this. And then the lawyer goes, no, this is going to cost you way more, so having them all present, they can all raise their concerns for whatever department they are part of,
Yes.
so that we can hash it out all together. It was funny when I started the podcast and my accountant was like, right, this wasn't on our plan.
I know where you're going with this. How are you going to monetize it?
Yeah. So we had those conversations, because it's like down a totally different path. Like I've never done, it definitely is aligned and it uses my strengths, but I don't know the business models. He doesn't either. So, that's where, and then I've got my mentor she is there alongside, but she is like, our relationship has grown. I know that I can talk to her in whenever I need, and she will, when you're stuck and you've got these mindset blocks, she will come in and she'll go, right, you're fixating on the wrong thing. And although this isn't her area of expertise, she is very good at reminding me of those pillars that I had set that are important for me.
That's so incredibly cool. I love that notion of like you creating your own board of directors, whether it is a proverbial board of directors, like just like people on that you go to for counsel, whether it's like a friend who's accountant, a friend who's a lawyer, an actual lawyer, whatever, or if you're like yourself and your husband who have, I'm sure, a couple corporations or whatever it is, whatever the setup is, you've got these people. But I think that's such sage advice to have these people talk to one another. And when you're putting this team together, making sure that the team, because we have a few of these people who do now talk to one another, which is really nice, because I don't want to be the bottleneck. I'm trying to tell the accountant what the lawyer is saying, and it's like,
yes,
I'm not describing it properly at all. I don't know, it's not my area of expertise, and like the policies or I don't know, oh God, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but you know what I mean? It's like, setting people up who are willing to have a team approach to it, because although sitting in that strategy meeting, you might be doing the math to be like, oh wow, this is like a $2,000 meeting right now because you're paying everybody.
Yes, yeah.
But you're saving so much money by not doing all the back and forth. Okay, Sarah, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to really go into what are your multiple income streams. So you have your position, education, which I knew that you were still there, but I totally think, just thinking of you, I'm like, oh, prolific entrepreneur, but no, you still have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think too, as well, that gives me, like, I am somewhat in the trenches. That is, I'm still, just because you've got a 9 to 5 doesn't mean that, I don't know. I guess there's this thing that you can't have a 9 to 5 while you're building multiple income streams. And so I'll go back to what my income streams are. So I've got education, I've got an advisory company, I've got a property management company, I've got a holiday rental company, I've got the podcast, we've got my husband's income, and then we've got dividend income, and then we've got investment portfolios that give us a return also.
So how are you doing it all? How are you doing the 9 to 5 with kids, 3 kids, ranging from 7 to 2?
Mm.
Yep. How are you making that all work? And you said without burning out.
My team. I've built a team. It started off with me writing down a list of all the things that I don't like doing and going, right, how much is it going to cost me to pay someone else to do it? So, for example, when I was first starting off, it was the cleaning. It was like, that is a really simple step to create a whole lot of mental space for you, because you're not thinking, oh, I've got to clean the upstairs toilet, or I've got to, just like those mundane tasks, hand them off to somebody else, And I was paying for a cleaner long before I could afford to pay for a cleaner. And I couldn't have had that. That gave me that room to grow because it alleviated something. So if I'm going to go down this path, what supports do I need in place? That has been my biggest drive of like, okay, right, if I'm going down this path, what supports do I need to have to make room for this? And I think that is how I can do it all.
Wow.
I think there's seasons where you're like, whoa, I need to check in because this is overwhelming. And there are seasons like where 1 week it is all crumbling down. And it's just a case of prioritizing, right, I can't wear this hat and wear this hat. And I think the biggest thing for me that has helped me not feel like this big walking hot mess. And when I first became a mother, that was my thing. I was writing emails, I was organizing contractors, I was talking to the finance guy, I was making breakfast for the kids, I was brushing the kids' hair, my husband was trying to have a conversation with me. I had all these tabs open, whereas now I time block my days. So I'm just wearing one hat, and I've gotten really good around the boundaries. If someone is coming at me with a question on when I'm wearing a different hat, it's like, okay, I'll get back to you at this time. But I'm not going to, nothing is ever really as urgent as we think that it has to be dealt with then and there. And then if it does, then it's just a priority, unfortunately, at that time.
And then what that's making me think of is then if you do have situations where there truly isn't enough time in the day, and you're like, I have to be taking this phone call while I'm getting my kids ready for school, then that's an indication that that's where you need to either automate, delegate, outsource, and that's an indication that it's not working.
Yeah.
It sounds like. And that would give you the pause to be like, okay, how could I take this? How could I make more space, take this off my plate? And if I can't do that, if it doesn't financially make sense, then maybe that's an indication it's not working. So say you have a small business, like an Etsy account or whatever, and you're constantly like, you just don't have enough time in the day, but it doesn't make sense to hire somebody to help you, then that's not maybe the right business model. Is my head going in the right direction with this?
Yeah, I think too as well, like sometimes it's not that might not be the right business model for you. It's what is taking up your time that's not giving you a return. So if you're running an Etsy business and there's too much there that you feel, you've got to really look at your tasks and write them down and go, right, when I do this, the income goes up. When I'm doing this, I'm seeing no return. So this list of things that you are using to fill in all these blanks, this blank white space. And I think too as well, like when you first start off in a small business, is that you think you've got all this time. So then you create tasks to fill in the blanks. And that is like a really good sign that you don't have a business strategy. And although I'm not into budgeting, I am into having a plan for your money. And if you don't know your numbers, then you're not running a business.
Beautiful. Okay, what about the person who is like, okay, I want to do this. I want to hire the cleaner, but it feels like I'm chasing my own tail. How do you change your mindset to be like, I can take this risk? Like you hired the cleaner before you felt like you could actually afford it. You know what I mean? It's like there has to be a step, there has to be a change that's made and a bit of a risk to start in order to free up the space, in order to grow and say, make more money, make more time to make more money. Like, how do you step into that if you're not there yet?
Yeah, I think it's a mindset issue there. You've got a mindset issue. And I think that's a shift from going from a poor mindset to a rich mindset, is that you're willing to spend money to make money. And when you are in a deficit sort of thinking of going, oh, I can't afford to spend this $80 a week on a cleaner, you're coming from a deficit mindset. Whereas when you're looking at, okay, right, for me, that cleaner is part of my support team. I call my cleaners the support team, the daycare, the support team, all of those things, because without them, there's a whole lot more on my husband and I's plate. Like, so also saying, if I'm going to go and invest this money in this cleaner, what does it get me? For me, it gives me my Saturdays back with my kids. I can be a fully present mum. My weekends, I do not do any, particularly Sunday, I do not do any chores. That is my time for my kids. You know, that is a total reset, just to switch the gears a little bit. And that's how I fill up my cup for the week. But yeah, I think you really need to get clear on what is the real reason, because it's not just the money. You're looking at a very narrow cost. You're looking at the financial value of that hire rather than the benefits of that hire.
That's so good. And for the person who's in the corporate job, who is feeling like, I need to leave this job. I need to get out of corporate because it's clearly not working, because I have no time. I'm spending my whole weekend cleaning. I have no time with my kids, whatever. I actually think that investing that, say, $150 on that cleaner and keeping the corporate job, like spending a bit of money to buy back your time in order to keep the job that wasn't working, in order to spend more time with your kids, like that feels like a worthwhile investment. Because as you're getting up and you're climbing the ranks at work and you're able to perform better because you're able to be present, show up at work, you're getting raises, like if it's the right job. So this is actually such an interesting conversation that I've never really thought about it from that perspective. And this is a conversation, Sarah, that I have so often when I'm coaching clients where, and I've said this on the podcast before, people come in and they're like, I need to leave this job. I want you to help me find another job. I'm not kidding. 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, that person is either in that same job or a similar job, but the whole system is just working better because of things like that. They're reprioritizing where they're spending their money, how they're spending their time, their relationship with work, their relationship with their boss. And that in and of itself is affording them that, stable income.
Yes.
And now with this conversation, they're like, okay, I'm going to take 5, 10, 15, 20% of that, invested in creating more streams of income to make more money.
Yeah. And I think that the biggest piece is also that peace of mind, is that, if corporate doesn't work out, then fine, that's fine. I've got my safety net, and then I've got income coming in after that. So I don't have to, if it doesn't work out and I'm completely miserable at it, I don't need to go and scramble for another job. And like you said earlier, click on Indeed, apply for the sake of it. I can actually sit back and go, right, what is going to be a good fit for me? Where am I going moving forward? What supports do I need in place? Because I feel like when you're in a cycle of burnout, the easiest way to interpret the story is it's the workplace's fault. This is going on. This isn't going on. Instead of you going, hang on, I didn't actually build the supports that I needed to hold that position or hold those responsibilities. So I think it's like this balancing act of you also being like, right, if I'm going to step into this area, what supports do I need to have in place so that I can do it, so that I'm not ending up burnt out, bitter, resentful, those sorts of things.
This is such a cool conversation, Sarah. I have to ask you, if someone wanted to spend a little bit of time, say that their commodity, the resource that they have to leverage is time. Maybe they've got 10, 20 hours a week, maybe max, that they could spare. In 2026, they wanted to create a small but mighty second stream of income. What are some ideas that you have? What are you seeing as, I don't know, trends or ideas? And I know this is like you have zero context, but off the top of your head.
Well, so I've asked my client if I can share this story. She actually came to me and she was like, look, we live out on a farm. My husband doesn't make that much money. We are in quite a remote location. They're in a really remote location in Australia. And she had said, how do I make a second income? Because I've got no money to make it money. And I'm like, okay, so what you are living the life, the sourdough making, the romanticized version of the homestead. You are living that right now. And I know for a fact her cooking is amazing. Like her relishes, I've heard people in our networks talk about them. So I'm like, she doesn't really like, and she's going, oh, should I do this and should I do that? And I'm like, you don't really like people. So don't start a business where you're like, you have to be, she's an introvert, don't go and choose a role where you have to go against those things. So anyway, she has started, so something that she does already is she already batches the relishes and the stuff like that. So I said, right, well, to give you some extra money, go and ask all these cafes in Melbourne that have got quite boutique-y sort of clientele, go and approach them and ask them if they can stock, send them a sample. She messaged me, we've only been working together for a month, and she messaged me and said that she's got 5 cafes on board, so that is huge. Like, and that for her is, she's already doing it anyway. She's already batching these. This doesn't cost her any extra money. It's creating extra money for her. She's leveraging what she already knows. I would love to know how to make relishes. And I said to her, but I'm scared, or like fermented things, but I'm scared I'm going to poison my whole family and end up in a news article.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't you, that is an avenue of income that she could go down later. But at this point in time, she is just creating a brand. And I said the story behind her brand, that then she's gone and marketed to these cafes, and they've gone, yeah, sure, yeah, we'll take you on. And it's not like she's going to make millions, but for her, she is doing something that she already loves doing, something that comes naturally, that she's got all this knowledge of, and she can talk for days and days about. But she's also feeling like she's contributing to the family, and it's giving her breathing space as she goes into the holiday period to know, I actually can afford to take my husband. I can pay for the holiday to take my husband away from the farm, and that is a big thing for her, is that I feel like I can see that my husband farming is a very hard profession. They're constantly working. My uncle told me never to marry a farmer, because they're always
My mom said never open a restaurant.
Oh yeah. So that has been like, and just her feeling like, oh, I've got nothing, and it's like everyone's got something. And I think as well, women sometimes focus on what strengths they don't have, and they try to strengthen those. But there are things that come easily to us, but because they come easy to us, we don't realize that they don't come easy to everyone, unless you have someone on the outside going, hang on.
Yes. And that's where like having good counsel around you is really important. And on your podcast that we just recorded as well, on the Richer podcast, we talked about that and how it is really important to have the right counsel. And we've talked about that in this discussion, where you're not being coached by your partner, by your parents, by your siblings. Let those people maintain those roles that they are in. Let your parents be your parents, not your business advisors.
Yeah.
Let your partner be your partner and make decisions together, but don't, you do need outside creative thinking. You need some fresh blood in there. Like if she didn't have you to be like, what about your relishes? Chances are there's other people in her life who probably wouldn't see that they're too close to it. They'd be like, well, that seems like you can't make money. But now based on this conversation, I'm seeing that relish story as like incredible, because not only is she making profit, I'm sure, on every jam or every relish jar she makes, but then she's also building a brand. And to your point, she could be doing like a little bit of coaching, or she could go on Instagram, and I guess she's an introvert, but you know what I mean? Like she can be turning that business into money as well. And if her leverage point was time, because she's got like the homestead life set up, then that's just like such a good example, because you weren't even just saying, oh, go start an internet business, go like, be frivolous. Like that's so smart. This is such a good conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, Sarah. I
Yeah.
so appreciate your wisdom. Now, I ask this to all my guests. What is something that you are currently still trying to figure out?
Something I am still currently trying to figure out. Podcasting. I'm still trying to figure out podcasting. That is something that I pride myself on in terms of the way that I have created my life, is that I feel like as a mother, all the parts of me have come together to complement the whole me. And I feel like that is something, there are times where I'm going, oh my goodness, like when I transitioned back to work, and this is something that other people might want to use too, is I would come in from work, I'd walk in the door and I'd put, right, I've got to get dinner done, I've got to do this, 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 this. And I would just be in this survival mode. Whereas now I walk in the door, I sit down, I have a cup of tea, I have a debrief, I talk to the kids, I check in, and it takes away that rush. For me, that is a huge transition period. For me, is transitioning between those hats, having certain systems or strategies that I use to get my not head in the game, but those sorts of things. So that is something for me that has been a huge savior of like not rushing from one hat to the next and taking a breath and being like, right, okay.
Intentional transitions. I love that. I could really use, and even if it's like, if someone's like, yes, but my kids have to eat, like, could it be 10 minutes? Like, that's making me think about rocking up in the house. I turn the TV on while I cook dinner because they get their little decompression time. That's their TV time. But why not just like spend 10 minutes on the floor playing magnet blocks for like, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Chat for a minute.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah, I definitely find that it's been a shift, because as soon as I would walk in the door and I'd go straight into the chores or making the dinner, because I'm going, they're going to ask for a snack soon, and then they won't want to eat their dinner, So it's like having that pause period to go, right. And, also too as well, I think my kids were picking up, when I walk in the door, my kids are rushing to give me a hug, and they're rushing to tell me about their day. Whereas when I'd walk in before I had my transition period, it was like, oh, mum's home. She's cooking dinner now. It's a totally different message that I was sending. I wasn't trying to send that because I'm coming from a place of love. I've got to get the dinner done, or I've got to do the stuff. But it's amazing when you step back and you go, hang on, I just need to take this time. Yeah.
That is so inspiring. Can I tell you a hack that I just recently came up with?
Yeah.
Okay. My kids are so into cucumber right now. It's insane. Like, it's actually scary how many cucumbers I've been buying. I will take it though, right?
Yeah.
And they both like it. So like one of them likes peppers, bell peppers, one of them doesn't. But it's like, this is where they meet in the middle. They both love cucumber. So I've been buying those like 2 packs of cucumbers, and I'm like the English cucumbers, I'm chopping them up. And my little guy always looks over the couch and goes, Mommy, snacky, snacky. And I was like, oh God, I can't do a snack, but dinner's going to be 20 more minutes. So I'm cutting the cucumbers one day, and I was like, you know what? Let's see what happens. Yeah. So I give them this pile of cucumbers, and they demolished it because they're watching TV, and it's mindless.
Yeah.
So now, whatever vegetable, usually like some sort of crudité, I'm like chopping up for their dinner because they won't eat like a cooked vegetable like I wouldn't when I was a child. I throw them crudités on the couch, each in their own little bowl or a little plate or whatever, and they're just sitting there. They eat more vegetables than I've ever seen a child eat in my life, because they're just not even noticing. And then honestly, like if there's any vegetables left over, like they'll eat it with their dinner, but then they're just eating like their carbs and their protein, calling it a day.
Yeah, totally.
Did I make this up? Did I see it somewhere? I don't know, but I'm rolling with it, and I hope someone else will try this too. Sarah, you're amazing. This has been such a wholesome conversation. Like, I just love your parenting vibe and ethos. I love your mindset around money. I love that you're actually proof, and you are showing that you can be a very present, intentional parent while creating wealth for your family, which, as we know, unlocks experiences and everything. And you just seem so grounded with it. And I think we need more examples of people like you. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Andrea. It's been a pleasure.
And if someone wants to reach out and work with you, how might they do that? And listen to your podcast.
So, the Richer podcast on Spotify and Apple is the best way to listen. And to contact me, just Instagram is the best, at richher_, is just DM me and we'll see where you're at and have a conversation.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Sarah.